So we're back. I apologize at the end of videos. For some reason, I'm supposed to have a trimmer that's supposed to take little parts off. So it's not doing it. So anytime I stop talking at the end of these videos, you can just cut out then. But anyway, the thing we know about customers is they're going to change over time. So the question becomes, how do they change? And the way they change is something called the S-curve. And that's that when you look at the lifetime of a product, you start out slow where it's fermenting and it's starting to grow, and then it hits a knee and takes off. And then it hits a growth stage, and then finally a product becomes mature and it starts to decline. The thing about S-curves is, can you predict them? Well, it gets difficult to, because there's just so many dynamic events and factors taking place, like technology might change, the market might shift, network effects might kick in, that the S-curve kind of changes. So it's kind of like it's S-curve shaped. When we talk about disruption, what disruption means is that you're introducing a new product at a different price point, typically much lower. And also you're introducing new features, new values into that market. And the thing is about disruption is that customers are elastic, and that's why big price changes can make big differences. So in terms of the market itself, in the very beginning, you just don't have a lot of competitors in a field. And then you have more competitors, but now you start focusing on things like marketing, quality, because you're becoming more mature and your customers are changing, so you need to match how they change. And so by the time you get to the end, there are very few players who exist, and most of these are probably just niche businesses that serve a specialized customer, and that's why they continue to survive. In terms of my customers, early on, they're really passionate about it. These are the best customers on earth. Then you hit something called the chasm, and that's that in technology, think of it this way. You, mom and dad, is there a chasm there when it comes to technology? Yeah, there is. And so that's why things take off and then suddenly they go flat, because your early adopters are the ones who are no-brainers. I mean, they just love it and they're just going to go ahead and buy it. For example, the Apple Watch, they sold 7 million of them. What did that prove to me? Well, that you have pretty much 7 million people in the world who are Apple brainless. But then all of a sudden it hit the plateau, and that's it. It came under scrutiny and discrimination, and subsequently people didn't buy it. And that's the thing, in that next phase, beyond the chasm, people are more price sensitive. I count on you. The thing is, first person through the door is the one who gets shot. And so it's sort of like, I'm a patient man. I'm going to sit back and watch all of you run through the door, pay premium prices and everything else. Oh, and not only that, you know what you're going to do for me? You're going to debug it. All technology is buggy. So I'm going to let you debug it. I'm going to let you tell the company how to fix the product. And then when they got it all fixed and the price goes down, that's when I swoop in. And then finally at the end, you do have firm believers at the end. The business might be a cash cow to the enterprise, but the market's no longer growing. And so here's the distribution of customers in the chasm. The thing is, the early innovators, you have to be careful for those of you who are going to do startups. Those are the ones who sucker you into thinking, oh my God, this is a no-brainer. And then you find out, no, that's not the case. But your early adopters and early majority have two totally different psyches, and that's why you see it in the data. The tough thing about being a startup is, first of all, 42% die because they find out they have no market need. And the other is, if you have a new product in a new market, it costs you up to 3 times more than somebody with an established product to be able to market. And that makes sense. And it makes sense from the point of view of somebody who knows nothing about you and doesn't understand you versus somebody who has some experience. What do you think it's going to cost more? to get them up to speed. The thing is, in terms of crossing, how do I cross the chasm? Well, maybe part of the reason why you're not crossing the chasm is people aren't aware of your product. So you got to work on promotion. The biggest thing about the people on the other side of the chasm is they're more risk averse. And so what you need to do is, what do they find out that's risky? Again, using the Amazon example, Bezos looked at everything where the early majority, what would they be afraid of? And he addressed all of it. He took away all the risk. And that's what you need to do in your product. Playing with price has an effect. You could also use influencers. And that's that people don't want to use the product because, geez, I don't see anybody using it. But now all of a sudden, if you see somebody that you respect or some celebrity or something like that, I mean, that's how Daymond John made FUBU. Essentially what he did is he got a bunch of rap artists to wear his clothes, and they got photographed, and everybody's like, gee, where did that shirt come from? I want that. And so we live in an influencer age. Once you start to sell, it has to diffuse. The thing is, if you do not get diffusion, you will never be successful. Why? Because it's just too damn hard to have to sell one person at a time. So how do you get diffusion? Word of mouth, which is, and actually all of this isn't new. I mean, it's been around. But the thing is, now you can talk to 100 friends. You can talk to 100 friends. So ideally what you're hoping for is a viral effect. In order to get across that chasm, you can also make your product better. You can actually find new uses that will appeal to more people. And of course, there are complementary assets and products. The thing is, when we look at examples of companies that crossed, what did they do with the calculator and the VCR? Yeah, you're too young to remember this, but the first calculators that came out were $100 a piece. And these are the calculators you pay $10 for today. And so what did they do? They dropped the price so they could make it mass market. 3G actually released in 2001, and it didn't take off until 2007. And this is a case of, because in 2001, those cell phones had screens that were too small, they had processors that were too slow, and they didn't have enough RAM. And so this was a case of where the infrastructure, the complementary parts, needed to be built out before it was really the right time for a smartphone. Word processing on computers, that got across because, yeah, people would love to word process, but they didn't understand how the programs worked. So educating your customer, and especially with technology, I don't understand it, can actually be enough to get you to cross. Products that get killed. Toys for nerds are a bad idea. Going into markets where there's a lot of competition and you don't stand out, no, that's going to get you killed. And the road is littered with apps that didn't make money because they had bad profit models. They tried to go freemium, they tried to do advertising, and they didn't get any money. VCs get it wrong too. For example, Facebook, they didn't think it was going to make it. They just thought, well, how do you make money off college kids trying to hook up? And what they didn't realize is that Facebook is a marketer's dream. And the reason why is that this huge monster database of people. And I know where they live, what the things they like. I also know who they're connected to. And so extremely powerful. And this is why Facebook is growing so rapidly. B2B is different than B2C. And that's that when you look at B2B, you have to be thinking about who are the decision makers. And the thing is, those decision makers could be a host of people. When you think of hospitals, you think, oh, the doctor's a decision maker. No, he's not. It's a materials manager. The person you're interested in is the one who can sign you a check. But the thing is, that doesn't mean he's not an influencer, because naturally they're not going to buy things unless the doctors like it or want it. Who actually does the work? It's the nurses. They actually touch the product. Uh, but often the nurses are, even though they're the users, they have some input, but they're not necessarily always listened to. And so you also have to think about deciders and gatekeepers. If you make a contract in B2B, these are the factors that you're going to have to contend with. The thing about being an entrepreneur is that you have to take into consideration, and this is one of the biggest mistakes entrepreneurs make, substitution. There are more than one way to do something. When you're an entrepreneur, you always think of people who are competing directly with you. Well, they may not be competing directly with you. And so, again, it's the Mac and Cool Bowl. The Mac and Cool Bowl declared there's nobody out there that does what we do. But a substitute approach to cooling your mac and cheese is just to go. So the thing is what you also have to contend with as an entrepreneur, and this is the biggest problem of them all, is status quo. Why? Because you can talk about you'll be excited talking about your great new product, but other people are going to end up being like Dr. Chow. I'm just going to sit back and wait and see what everybody else does. And so your challenge is how to find the people who are going to be passionate, and at the same time, how are you going to energize the status quo? So that's how customers adopt products. We're going to now move on to our next section, where we start to think about strategy.